Hello friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I am Joycey Joy and today in this lecture we will discuss about the RBI surplus transfer to the government. Many of you were messaging me constantly on Facebook asking me to prepare a lecture on RBI surplus transfer to the government. But even though a bit late I have come up with this lecture, but I ensure you that this lecture would cover all the important details for your examination from this topic. So I have tried to cover as much as articles, as much as related news and facts regarding RBI surplus transfer to the government, and I promise you that this lecture is going to clear all your clarifications and your queries regarding the RBI surplus transfer to the government. So let us start with the current affair. So the current affair, as you all might be knowing, the RBI, that is the Reserve Bank of India, has recently approved a transfer of 1.76 lakh crore rupees to the government and also a one-time transfer of excess provisions amounting to 52,637 crore. So this is the current affair, that is the transfer of surplus from RBI to the government. RBI is the central bank. Now central bank is going to transfer surplus to the central government. Now, what is important here is that RBI is not an ordinary company. It is also not any organization. So, if it is a company or an organization, then the company or the organization will have to transfer dividend. Dividend is the share of profit of a company. So, in case of a normal company or an organization, a share of profit which is called the dividend has to be transferred to the government or to the owner of the company. So, since RBI is not a company or an organization, the method of transferring this would be different. So, this is most important thing here. So, we will be analyzing how the transfer has taken place, various norms, and also what are the existing guidelines in this regard. All this we will discuss in detail in this lecture. Let us now first understand how does a central bank or an RBI, Reserve Bank of India, generate profits, or how does RBI make profits? There are various ways by which RBI generates profit. The first one, RBI within its mandate and functions carries out various functions and roles as the regulator, as a central bank, as the apex monetary institution, as the custodian of forex reserves in the country. So in various roles and responsibilities that the RBI hold, there are various sources by which it will generate revenue or profits as well. So let us see what are they. First one, it manages the borrowings of the government and of that of the state government. So basically government securities are traded in the market by RBI through the open market operations. So the borrowings of the central government and also the state government is managed by the RBI, and in this regard also it will generate some profit or some revenue. Secondly, it also has a regulation function or a supervisory function. So it is the regulator of banks, commercial banks, and also NBFCs, that is non-banking financial companies in the country. So as a regulator or as a supervisor also it has certain revenue generation. Thirdly, it earns returns on its foreign currency assets because RBI is the custodian of forex reserves in the country. So it earns from the returns on foreign assets or foreign currency assets. Now, what are these foreign currency assets? So, these foreign currency assets are the bonds or any treasury bills of other central banks of other countries, top rated securities from other countries, deposits from other central banks of other countries, etc. These are foreign currency assets. So, they get certain returns on this foreign currency assets as well. Now, fourthly, it manages the currency as well as the payment systems. So, the entire payment system is managed by RBI. It also manages the currency circulation or the money circulation in the economy. So, these are all roles and responsibilities of RBI. In this mandate or in this scope, it generates certain revenue. Now, the RBI will also earn certain interest on its holdings of local rupee denominated government bonds or government securities, that is G-Secs or government bonds. That is the sovereign bonds, that is the government bonds or the government securities which are called the G-Secs. So they will earn certain interest. And RBI will also earn management commission on handling the borrowings of the government. We have seen in the beginning that RBI manages the borrowings of the government, both the central government and the state government. And by managing the borrowings, it will get some commission for the management function that it undertakes. So these are the profits for RBI. Now let us come to the expenses of RBI. So these are the ways in which RBI will generate revenue. Now there would be certain expenditure also for the RBI. So let us come to that. The RBI's greatest expenditure or the biggest expenditure is on printing of currencies. So RBI prints the currencies. It is the authority that is responsible for printing of currencies in the economy. Thereby it has to spend money or expense on printing of currencies. Now second one is the salaries of the staff. So the staff of the RBI is also paid by the RBI. Now also the RBI will give commission to other commercial banks for undertaking transactions on behalf of the government. So certain commission is given to commercial banks as well. So these are all some of the major sources wherein RBI will have to spend money or expenditure of the RBI. Now the profit of the RBI is the revenue of RBI minus the expenditure of the RBI. So this is called the profits of RBI. Now hope this is very clear for you, and this concept is important for your preliminary examination. In your prelims, certain options can be given, and from that you have to choose what are the expenditure of RBI, what is the revenue sources of RBI. Such questions can be asked in your prelims examination. Now let us come to the nature of arrangement between the Government of India and the RBI with regard to surplus transfer or the transfer of excess or surplus from RBI to the government. So first thing regarding this, what you need to understand is that RBI does not provide any kind of dividend. Now what is meant by the concept of dividend? Let us take any company or any organization. So this company would be generating certain profits. And this profit has to be distributed among the owners of the company. Now, who are the owners of this company? The owners of the company are the shareholders of the company. Now, RBI is not like an ordinary company. So, it need not give dividend or the share of profit to the government also. Now, let us see what is RBI, what is the autonomous status of RBI. RBI or the Reserve Bank of India was established in 1935, and in 1935 it was promoted as a private shareholders bank. And in 1935 the paid up capital, that is the total capital of RBI, was 5 crore rupees. So it started as a private shareholders bank with paid up capital of 5 crore in 1935. But in 1949 RBI was nationalized by the government. So in January 1949 RBI was nationalized, and as a result of this nationalization it became a sovereign institution of the government. That is, the government became the sovereign owner of RBI after the nationalization of RBI. So the central bank is now going to transfer the excess of income over expenditure to the government, and for that the section 47 clarifies the ways and the nature of arrangement between Government of India and RBI with regard to transfer of excess reserves or surplus by the RBI. So it is according to section 47 of the RBI Act that the surplus is being transferred. So let us see what is section 47 of RBI Act. So according to section 47, after making a provision by the RBI, this provision is for bad debts and for doubtful debts. So after making a provision for bad and doubtful debts, also for depreciation assets, contributions to staff, that is the expenses of RBI. So we have seen there were certain expenses for RBI. So RBI will have to maintain a provision for meeting all the expenses of the RBI, and also a provision can be kept for bad and doubtful debts. And after making this provision, the surplus has to be transferred to the central government. This is the provision according to section 47 of the RBI Act. Now let us come to the payment of taxes, whether RBI pays tax to the government. So the simple answer would be that RBI does not pay any tax to the government. This is a very, very important fact for your preliminary examination. Statements can be asked whether RBI is paying taxes to the government or not. So RBI does not pay any taxes to the government. Now this is according to section 48 of the RBI Act. So section 47 and 48 is very important. Section 47 deals with the transfer of surplus. Section 48 deals with the payment of taxes. So what is section 48? It talks about the exception of RBI or the bank from income tax and also super tax. So according to section 48, RBI is exempted from paying income tax or any other tax to the government. Now let us look at RBI section 48 in detail. Now, on what is this tax paid? RBI generates certain income, certain revenue, certain profits and gains. So on this income or on this profit or the gains earned by RBI need not pay any kind of taxes to the government. This is very, very important. Now let us see whether there is an explicit policy on the distribution of surplus. No, as of now, there is no explicit policy on the division or the distribution of surplus between the RBI and the government. But Y.H. Mallegam committee of the RBI board had earlier reviewed this and gave certain suggestions. Let us see what were the suggestions given by Y.H. Mallegam committee. So Y.H. Mallegam committee was responsible for reviewing the adequacy of reserves held by the RBI and regarding the surplus distribution of RBI and the government. So this committee was formed in the year 2013, gave its recommendations in 2013. So according to this committee, the committee recommended for a higher transfer of dividend to the government or to the central government. So the Y.H. Mallegam committee, which was formed in 2013, was also in favor of the government in the sense that it recommended more surplus transfer from RBI to the government. Now let us see what was the difference between RBI and the government. Recently, a few months back, there were contentions between RBI and the government, and that is how the Bimal Jalan committee or the high-powered committee was constituted. So what was the difference between RBI and the government? Let us first look into the government's stance. So government argued that the global benchmarks are very less. That is, the global standards of setting up reserves or the surplus by the central banks is very less compared to RBI's excess. So when we compare other central banks around the world to that of RBI, the other banks hold lesser surplus with them, and compared to that, RBI was holding much more surplus with them. So this was the argument of the central government, and that is why the government wanted to transfer more money from RBI to the government. Now let us come to central bank. For the central bank or for the RBI, they argued that they needed more reserves or more surplus with them in order to preserve their autonomy. So according to central bank, if there are bigger reserves on the balance sheet, then it will help in maintaining better autonomy for the central bank. So this was the rationale given by the central bank. So there was a difference of opinion between RBI and the government. Government argued for more reserves from RBI. At the same time, RBI argued that in order to preserve their autonomy, they need to keep more reserves with themselves. Now let us come to other central banks. Let us see how does other central banks maintain the reserves with themselves. So the central banks in United Kingdom and the US, that is United States of America, they decide about the transfer of surplus from their central banks to the government after consulting with the government. So if we examine the government's role in UK and US, it is very high because the central banks usually consult the government, and then after the consultation, they transfer the revenue or the surplus to the government. Now in case of Japan, in Japan, the government itself decides how much has to be transferred from Japanese central bank to the government. So the role of government in deciding the surplus transfer is very high in other countries, especially developed countries. Now if you look at the global average of surplus transfer, it would be 0.5% of the GDP or the gross domestic product. So this is the global average. So this is regarding the surplus transfer from RBI to the government. You can find the PDF of this lecture on our website www.studyiq.com. You can also follow my Facebook page for more video updates. You can write to me at joycey.studyiq@gmail.com for any of your queries and clarifications. Thank you.